I'm Philip Revel. I've been working on the TESS project with Climate Futures in Edinburgh in Scotland. For me, the defining challenge of our times is how we manage the transition away from dependence on fossil fuels. We all live in a community of some sort, and we have an interest in making our communities as resilient as possible to cope with whatever unexpected events and shocks they may experience.
In future, it will be crucial that our communities are as resilient as possible. It's not just a question of being able to bounce back after a crisis. It's about being able to thrive in uncertain times, respond creatively to future challenges, and find locally appropriate routes to a zero-carbon future. Exploring Community Resilience was a 2-year action research project run by Nick Wilding and supported by Carnegie UK. It provides the basis and the inspiration for the workshop. This short video is accompanied by a resource package for facilitators. Together, this video and the resource package can support you to run workshops with groups, helping them to explore how their communities can become more resilient. We suggest you structure a community resilience workshop around 6 elements. Introduce the participants to systems thinking and the idea of sudden, unpredictable change. Discuss the interconnected systems that affect our communities and how these are becoming stressed. Introduce the concept of different states of resilience. Introduce a so-called compass of resilience. Critically self-assess the community's current state of resilience. Action planning to build resilience in the round, to give the community the best possible chance of creating the future it wants. We're all used to thinking in a linear way. We tend to assume that tomorrow will be much like today. So one good means of introducing people to systems thinking is to give them personal experience of being part of a system. The triangles game is explained in the accompanying notes. It's an easy way to involve people in a system which, although simple, can behave in complex ways. You can use the game to illuminate a number of different ideas. For example, it can demonstrate the idea of leverage points in a system and how, the further a system is pushed away from equilibrium, the more unpredictable its behaviour becomes. Our ecological life support systems are under threat. We're seeing soil erosion, deforestation, plummeting biodiversity, rising CO2 levels, and ever warmer oceans and atmosphere. Our social, economic, and political systems are also under stress. They're also moving away from equilibrium. As climate change takes hold, we'll not only be experiencing more frequent and extreme storms, social, political, and economic instability is also very likely. If there's time, participants might find it useful to think and talk about the social, economic, political, and ecological systems that affect their local communities. In what ways are these systems currently under stress? What challenges does this pose? And what opportunities does it create? Take a look at the accompanying resource package for some suggestions on how to do this. At this stage, it can be helpful if participants spend some time thinking about their own experiences of resilience. When have they needed to be resilient? Encourage them to draw on their own experience of crises in their own lives or events in their community. Again, have a look at the resource package for some ideas about how to do this and how to draw out the lessons people have learnt from these experiences. You can then introduce the idea of distinct states of resilience. These determine how a system responds to an external shock. Does it collapse and break down? Does it bounce back to normal? In other words, does it break even? Or does it recover and use the shock as a stimulus for creative change, an opportunity to break through to a new level? Nick Wilding introduced the idea of understanding a community's resilience by looking at 4 broad dimensions or aspects. The dimensions relate to a community's people, economy, culture, and its connection to other communities. The dimensions are healthy and engaged people, the physical and psychological well-being of individuals in the community, a strong and localized economy within ecological limits, with meaningful, locally based livelihoods less dependent on fossil fuels. Building a creative, inclusive culture, socially inclusive and open to new ideas. Cross-community links, the strength and quality of a community's links and partnerships with other communities and across sectors. In order for people to understand and become familiar with the idea of distinct states of resilience and what these feel like for each of the 4 dimensions, the TESS online tool uses a tile shifting game. Players are asked to rearrange short phrases characterizing the different states for each dimension. In a workshop, it's probably more appropriate to split people into groups and ask them to fit these phrases into a 12-square grid on a large sheet of paper. Once each group has come up with a solution to the puzzle, you can have a short discussion. Suggest that the groups think of improved descriptive phrases that have relevance to their own local community. By using the TESS online resilience assessment tool, groups can critically assess each dimension of resilience for their own community. Drawing on their understanding from the previous exercise, small groups should discuss each aspect of their own community and agree on a score between 1 and 9 for each dimension. More important than the precise score are the reasons a group has for coming up with it. For each dimension of resilience, each group should list what's good and what's not so good about their community. And for each dimension, they should also list ideas of what would help their community to become more resilient. Having completed the previous exercise, each group should have a compass plot of their own community's resilience. They should also have explanations for this assessment and a list of suggested actions that would create a more resilient community. A group's plot will probably show that its community is more resilient in some dimensions than in others. For example, it might be doing really well in terms of healthy and engaged people, but have a very fragile local economy and few local job opportunities. Or a community might be struggling to overcome a divide between long-standing residents and new arrivals, or between rich and poor. Here's a key point. For a community to become fertile ground for a transition to a zero-carbon future, it will need to be resilient in the round, across all dimensions. This tool is intended to help a community critically assess its current situation, so it can then prioritise future actions and give itself the best possible chance of achieving this rounded resilience. If a workshop is split into several smaller groups, it will be interesting to compare each group's assessments, collate their proposed actions, and discuss any areas of disagreement. Once a list of proposed future actions has been agreed, they'll need to be prioritised. An action planning process can establish who needs to do what and by when to take these actions forward. It's important to make sure that someone takes ownership of each action. This doesn't necessarily mean they have to implement it themselves. It does mean they take responsibility for making sure that it doesn't get forgotten. By this stage, the group will hopefully be motivated enough to agree when and where to hold a follow-up session, a chance for them to think about their action plan in more detail. We hope you found this short video useful as a guide to running a workshop exploring the concept of community resilience. And we hope it helps you to support community groups to prioritise their activities, so they're better able to respond creatively to the challenges of moving to a zero-carbon future.